Well, welcome to this video. Aims of this one is to look at storm surges, and basically, hopefully by end of the lesson, you know the following. You're going to know what a storm surge is. You're going to be able to explain how storm surges form. You're going to spend some time studying at least two studies of storm surges, one from an HIC, one from an LIC, and you're going to start thinking about evaluating the importance of different factors in understanding the impact of storm surges. So what makes them worse, what makes them better. Okay, so let's get on with it. Now, at the end of this lesson, you're going to set some homework, and that's basically thinking about this 12-mark question. Assess the importance of economic development influencing the severity of impact of storm surges. And like I say, it's a 12-mark question, and as we're going through this lesson and as you're working for it, that's what you're aiming to be able to answer. Okay, so as we said at the start, one of the aims is to be able to explain how storm surges work. Now, I'll explain that in a bit more detail on the next slide, and I'll go through this diagram in a bit more detail. But once I've done that, your job is going to be to either draw a labeled diagram, this one perhaps with a bit more detail, or write an explanation. And again, page 138 in the textbook should help you there. But let me explain this diagram in a bit more detail for you. So what you can see here is that actually there's kind of three things, if you like, which actually contribute to the formation of a storm surge. So the first one, and arguably the least important, let me just draw it here, is this small bulge of water. And this is formed because basically a hurricane or a depression is an area of low pressure. And what that means is that air is rising. And it's a bit like a giant vacuum cleaner. So as the air is rising and the pressure is less, it's releasing the pressure on the surface of the water, and so it's rising. So you do actually get a storm surge due purely just to the low pressure and effectively, like I say, the air rising and sucking it up. So you've got that sort of what's called a pressure-driven surge. But it's not actually that important. It's about 5% of the total. Now the rest of it is basically made up of two factors. So if we look at the rest of this, what we'll see is a much bigger storm surge is what's called the wind-driven surge. And there are two basic factors here. One is a bit like a tsunami. So actually those winds are actually churning the water in the deep ocean. And just like in a tsunami, where there's no interference with shallow land, there's hardly a wave. As soon as that sort of water starts hitting land, well, all of a sudden friction's there, the actual that vertical circulation can't carry on, it's disrupted, and so the water starts to build up. So you've got that going on. You've also just got this, you've just simply got the force of the waves pushing the water onto sea. Now a key bit here to consider is that this can be 10 meters higher than normal level. So if this is your sort of high tide mark, then actually you're talking 10 meters higher. But if the storm hits at low tide, then actually you're probably not even going to notice it. So actually the other thing that this shows is that high and low tide is absolutely critical, and that the worst storm surges will occur during high tide. Now, I hope that helps explain it. Your job now is to stop this video and get either a really good detailed diagram explaining the formation, or if you prefer to do it in bullet points, that's absolutely fine, do it like that, but you need to actually make sure you're clear in your head how this is formed before you carry on. So stop the video, get that done, please. Okay, so next question to think about is, we've talked about the actual storm. What about coastline? Coastline is really important to understand what's going to happen. So we know that as the storm gets in closer, that as the land gets shallower, that'll make it worse. But also the shape of the coastline is important. So take this example here. So we've got sort of like a V shape here in the middle of the North Sea. And just think about what's going to happen if a storm is pushing that water south. And hopefully, if I just click here, you'll see as it goes south, actually the North Sea gets narrower and narrower and narrower as it goes towards the English Channel. So if you've got a large body of water being pushed south, The only place it can go, it can't all go through the English Channel, is it's going to go onto land. And that's one of the reasons why the east coast of England and the Netherlands are particularly prone. So coastline's another important factor there. Okay, so time for you now to get your research done. There are two case studies in the textbook, the UK 2013, okay, and Bangladesh 1991. I'll also provide you with a geofact sheet that's got other case studies, and if you want to, you can look at that and do the same thing here. What I need you to do then is draw up a table like this. It's worth just noting, I've used the word cyclone here. Basically, really should probably be low area of pressure, because a cyclone is a term often used for low pressure areas, but hurricane, depression, typhoon, all of these low pressure areas would also have the same effect. And although we get cyclonic weather in the UK, we don't get cyclones. So probably a misnomer there. I should just correct that. So your job is to probably stop. It's probably going to take you an hour or so, possibly even longer. Get that table really detailed. Make sure you're clear about the vulnerability. Make sure you're clear about what capacity to cope there was. Think about the characteristics of the actual storm. How powerful was it? How big was the storm surge? What were the impacts, the economic, social, environmental effects, and to what extent was there an effective response? Were they able to evacuate? Was there effective warnings? Was there overdependence on foreign aid? Was there storm defences? Things like that. So remember, what we're trying to do is answer that 12-mark question. You're going to need to stop this now, get some serious research done, and then come back when you've got that done. Okay, so I'm hoping what you can do is you can see that there are a whole host of factors which have affected those case studies. So if you're looking at Bangladesh, for example, you might actually think that economic development was really important. It simply isn't, it's a low-income country, albeit one with rapidly expanding economy. It's got high coastal population. It's got topography wise incredibly low, very powerful storm. You can see how that's going there. If you look at England on the other hand, okay, actually high levels of economic development, good flood defences, good response. Potentially though far more things to actually break because it's a high developed country. Population at risk. Perhaps not so much the density here, but the fact that many of those communities, of our coastal communities, are some of the poorest in the country and also have an aging population, so that might be something to come into it. Again, we know that the shape of the coastline, that V-shaped funnel we were talking about in the North Sea, is really important. Again, the relative importance of the storm intensity. High tide, particularly important for the UK case study, because you're not dealing with such a powerful storm as you are with Bangladesh. So they are the sort of factors that you want to be thinking about when you come to structure your essay, which I'm sure you'll be in a second. So homework, go away, have a think about this. If you want to plan it and then give it to me to check the plan, I'm more than happy to do that. It will need an introduction. How you actually answer is up to you. You can either do sort of Bangladesh's introduction, Bangladesh, UK, possibly a third case study if you want to include that as well. Or you could actually do it, if we go back to that previous slide, you could basically do the importance of economic development, and then you could look at topography and do it thematically. Either way is fine, but like I say, plan it and come back to me. Now, this is an assess question, and that means you've got to use a sort of evaluative and assessing language. So try and make sure that when you're talking about points, you're using that evaluative language. And there's just some sets and starters there that you might want to have a think about. Now, I hope that's been helpful. As ever, text me, email me, sorry, if there's any questions. Have a go at this. Like I say, if you want to do a plan, that's well and good. And I hope it's been useful. Thank you so much.